What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Ryan Pineda Show, where we talk all things money, real estate, and entrepreneurship. And in today's episode, I'm going to tell you about a deal we recently just did where the buyer backed out at the last minute of our wholesale. Here's what happened. So before we get into the juicy parts of me wanting to punch this buyer in the face, let me tell you about the deal and how it played out. So this seller called in on our TV commercial and she was selling a home out in Pahrump. So for those of you who don't know, Pahrump is a town about an hour away from Las Vegas. I don't want to use any discriminatory words to describe the type of people that live in Pahrump, but I'll just say that there's a lot of land, there's a lot of trailers, you could figure out the rest. Either way, we've done a lot of deals in Pahrump. I actually like the city. Honestly, I just don't like flipping out there because it's an hour drive away. It's a big headache for my project manager to go out there just to check one property when you got 20 other ones in Las Vegas you're managing. We can definitely make money out there, but is it worth the time? Is it worth breaking our supply chain? And the answer is typically no. So anytime we get a deal out there, our goal is to try and wholesale it. I flipped out there and had success, but I just realized it's not worth it for our business. So we ended up locking this deal up over the phone. We never even saw the property. So anyways, the seller calls in and she has a mobile home out there for sale. It's on 2.5 acres, which is a really big piece of land, so that was attractive. And it was a newer build mobile home. It was in the 1990s, which is pretty new for our standards. Looking at the comps, the ARV came out to about $180,000 without the land. The comps all had about 1 acre, this had 2.5. So we felt that 180 was gonna be the minimum. It had the potential to do even better. She said that the mobile home was worth nothing. So as I said, we locked this deal up over the phone, but what the seller told us was the mobile home is useless. It's not worth anything. She wanted us to write in the contract that the mobile home was useless and needed to be scrapped. So we wrote it and we locked the property up for $55,000. Our thought was she was probably being dramatic and just trying to protect herself. Sure enough, we went out there and it looked fine. It looked like a normal mobile home that we see all the time. Just needed to be renovated. Our rehab estimate was about $35,000 and we had locked it up for $55,000. That means we'd be all into the deal for $90,000 with an ARV of over $180,000. That is a big spread. If we were to take on this project, we'd make about $70,000. Now, when you're talking $70,000, I will go flip in Pahrump. When you're talking $20,000, I'm probably not gonna do it. But at the end of the day, I would still rather just wholesale it and be done with it if possible. So we blasted it out to our cash buyers list and we had a few offers. The highest offer was for a $20,000 assignment fee. Now, if you've watched my video on how to choose whether to flip or rent a home, you could find it in the link below. You know that I have a 2-to-1 rule. And the 2-to-1 rule states that if I am going to make 2 times or more on the flip versus the wholesale, then I'm gonna flip it. So in this example, the flip would make $70,000 and the wholesale would make $20,000. So that's 3.5 times the wholesale fee. So in a normal scenario, I would absolutely be flipping this home, but it's in Pahrump and I don't really wanna flip out there. And it would be the same thing for me as if there was a deal in Los Angeles. I just don't wanna flip out there because I don't have the crews or the systems in place. So we're almost always gonna take a wholesale fee when possible. And for this deal, we ended up taking the $20,000 assignment fee. My rule only applies to the local market, which I flip in. So in Vegas, I would have absolutely bought it as a flip. Now, we assigned the deal to somebody who actually buys in Pahrump for a living. That's their main market. And they wanted to use their title company. Now, typically we'll never allow the buyer to change the title company, but in this case, we did it because he was the only buyer willing to pay that much. And that was part of his deal. We had to use his local title company in Pahrump. We said, fine, let's do it. Now, we don't have much of a relationship with this title company, but they're a brand name title company, so we thought nothing of it. They're doing the title searches, we're in escrow, we're expecting the buyer to purchase it as usual, and 2 days before closing, the buyer calls us and says, hey, I can't buy the deal. We're like, you can't buy the deal, why? He said, I'm scared there's squatters in the mobile, I don't wanna buy it, you can't evict anyone with everything going on right now, I need to back out. And we said, look, if you wanna back out, that's your deal, but we're gonna take your earnest money deposit. And our earnest money deposits are always $5,000 a minimum on our deals. Typically, we always have that earnest money deposit in place because our title company makes sure they get it. But if you remember, we used his title company. And guess what happened? He didn't put an earnest money deposit down. So he had no skin in the game and he didn't care about backing out because he had nothing to lose. So there are 2 lessons to learn from this. Number 1, make sure you're always getting the earnest money deposit. Even if you use a different title company you're not accustomed to, you need to be on top of your game, making sure that the buyer does what they say they're gonna do. You can't rely on your title company to do the things for you, which we did. We got comfy with our other title company, and this title company didn't do the same thing. They didn't let us know he had never deposited the earnest money deposit. So it led to this whole situation and he had no skin in the game. And now we're in a really bad spot because the seller's expecting to close in 2 days and we don't have a buyer. The second thing we learned is we're never selling to this guy again. I wanted to punch this guy in the face for backing out right before the close date. I've got no issue if you want to back out during due diligence period or after inspecting it and it not being good, but do not back out weeks later right before we're about to close. That doesn't sit well with me. I don't care if you've bought 1 million deals from me. We're done. So we now had to scramble and decide what to do. The decision was this: do we want to extend escrow and try to find a new buyer, or do we want to just close on it and flip it ourselves? I said, let's explore extending escrow, see if the seller will let us do it. We asked the seller, she said no. Well, it didn't hurt to try. And I would say that if you guys ever get caught in this situation, try to extend escrow if you can. Lucky for us, we had the cash, we have the investors to be able to buy it either way. The real question was just, do we want to buy it or not? Knowing that the potential flip profit was $70,000, I felt comfortable buying it. So we ended up closing on it for $55,000, fully expecting that we were gonna flip it. After we bought it, we went there and rekeyed the property. There was no squatters, there was none of that stuff he was scared about. Honestly, he was more than likely just scared about the economy and the pandemic and all that stuff. He was just trying to make an excuse for why he was backing out. But we ended up rekeying it, putting a lockbox on there, and we were gonna get bids. But I ended up going to my team and I said, look guys, I'm looking at the market. I don't see anything for sale in Pahrump under 100,000 with this type of land. I honestly think we could sell it as is for $100,000 if we just list it. Let's throw it on the market, give it a couple weeks, see if that sells it. If not, we can always go back and fix it up. So we put it on the market for $100,000. And what do you guys think happened after that? Give me your guess. Did we get an offer or did we end up fixing it? All right, we ended up getting a full price offer for $100,000. But there was a catch to this offer. They wanted to do seller financing. So the buyer wanted to put $75,000 down and he wanted me to hold a note for $25,000. To me, I was completely fine with it. In my mind, that $25,000 is house money. I was willing to take $75,000 for it 2 weeks before. So the fact that he's gonna give me $75,000 now and then an IOU for $25,000 a year from now, I'm totally cool with that. So we ended up accepting the deal and doing it at those terms. So we ended up getting the $75,000 anyway, though we did have to pay realtor fees and closing costs twice. So instead of it being a $20,000 assignment fee, it was really like a $15,000 profit on the front end. But then I also get $25,000 when he sells it. The buyer is going to flip it. So he has a year to pay me the $25,000 plus about 6% interest. I'm not really worried about the interest on $25,000, but once I get that $25,000 plus the 15, this is gonna turn it into a $40,000 profit. I don't have to fix it up. We don't have to tie any money up. We end up getting the best of both worlds. We essentially got a wholesale fee plus an IOU for later on. So it ends up being a good, happy ending. Now, what can you guys learn from this story? Number one, buyers back out. It happens. You gotta have a contingency plan. If you don't have a contingency plan, you might find yourself in a really bad situation, not being able to perform on your contract. You might screw up a seller's life, or you might end up getting sued for not performing. So make sure you have a contingency plan in place. Number two, the MLS is always gonna get more money. I've seen it time and time again where we send a deal out for wholesale, maybe we'll make 10 to 20,000, but we go ahead and buy the property and throw it on the MLS as is and make twice as much. We've done it many times. So if you have the ability to buy a property instead of just wholesaling it, you've got the potential to make a lot more by throwing it on the MLS. And it's a strategy that we call the wholesale. Essentially, it's a wholesale and a retail deal. And it's one way that we're able to have much higher profits than just a normal wholesaler because we can take it down and get the best end buyer. The third lesson from this story is that there's money in the surrounding areas of your market. We've made money in Pahrump. We've made money in the other weird areas around Vegas like Sandy Valley and Prim and Sloan, Boulder City. There's a lot of money to be made in the outside areas. And there's typically much less competition in those areas. So if you're having trouble finding deals in a big market, think about going to the surrounding markets. There's always a buyer for anything if you price it right. I'm happy we had a good ending, and I'm hoping that the end buyer also is profitable. I think they'll do just fine buying it for 100, putting 35 in it, and potentially getting more than 180. It'll be a win-win all the way around, except for the guy who backed out. He probably feels pretty stupid now because he could have just bought it for 75 and then sold it for 100 right there. But that's his loss. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, do me a big favor, go hit that like button, go hit that subscribe button, and if you're really crazy, go hit the bell notification. You'll know every time I release a new video. And go follow me on all my socials. I'm active on there daily. I'd love to interact with you. And until next time, take care.